Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good old boys in Canada. You know we love you in Canada. Africa, don't forget, I haven't forgotten about you, Africa. I always get some tweets from when I don't say that name first, Big C, but you know there's no one we love more than you good old boys down south in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, Big C, on this beautiful January the 9th, 2018. How's it going for you good old boys?
Well, Charlton, there's nobody down here that has slept in the past 2 days. I mean, the party and the ruckus is still going on, and the unbelievable game last night that we had in that beautiful Mercedes-Benz Dome here in Atlanta. I mean, Charlton, you know, you talk about electrifying.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is what championships are supposed to be.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be hard-fought, come down to where everything is meaningful. And you think about the last 3 national championships, Charlton, they've all come down to the last play of the game.
Yeah, they all have, Big C, and that's one of the things that I don't care what anybody says about football, whether it's college football or NFL football. The Falcons built that brand new state-of-the-art stadium, one of the most gorgeous stadiums I've ever seen, and the fact that when you have a college championship game, it dwarfs the sound that NFL fans make, maybe because they're younger, Big C, and their lungs can hold off more, but that's always funny. I do want to say today's segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. So Big C, obviously, down there in that environment, seeing all of that red in the stadium and all of the pomp and pageantry and the great history of Alabama football, just give me your thoughts on Nick Saban. Pulled another one out of his hat, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I don't know if he pulled it out of his hat or he pulled it out of his pocket. You know, with the amount of money that Nick can make things happen.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
He's the highest paid for coaching college football for no reason. But you think about it, Charlton, he's been at Alabama 9 years.
Yeah.
9.
Yeah.
Time has flown by so quickly, but in that 9 years, he has 5 national championships, Charlton.
Wow.
5.
Yeah.
You know, he basically winning a championship every other year, you know, on average.
Yeah.
But, you know, what he has built on the college level, Charlton, I don't know if it'll ever be equal again. You know, the next closest coach to him has 3, and that's Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
Nobody active, you know, has more than 3. So he has twice as many national championships as Urban Meyer. But when you think about this game, Alabama opened up the season this year in that Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta, beating up on Florida State.
Yeah.
They closed out the season in that Mercedes-Benz Dome, Charlton, winning another national championship, and they won it in dramatic style.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about the president attending the game, Charlton, and the last time that he pulled for somebody in Alabama, they lost.
Yeah.
You know, Roy Moore.
Yeah.
And he was there in the first half, and you look at it, Alabama lost the first half.
Yep.
He disappeared, and all of a sudden, magic, you know.
That's
for some reason, the people in Alabama don't fare well when he's around.
That's funny. When would you ever thought it would take a bunch of black guys for Alabama to win something? He used all his white cronies. They couldn't bring him home any political favor, but they took a lot of young black athletes and they brought a national championship to the state of Alabama, Big C. I just think that's so funny when you look at the irony of the Trump administration. But I want to get, before we even ask about football, how much money does it cost for Air Force One to fly in? I think he was at another state down in Tennessee. Then he flew.
He was down in Tennessee.
And then you know how they have to shut down the airways when Air Force One comes in town, so that jams up the airports. And even with the bad weather on the East Coast, then he flies into Georgia, not that far away, for just a half on taxpayer dollar. He was not down there for official business. About how much money do you think he spent of taxpayer dollars to watch a half of football, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, not only that, you think about this is the busiest airport in the world in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And he shuts down the airways because nothing can be around Air Force One for 5 miles.
Really?
So you think about all that air traffic that has to be diverted while he's in airspace.
Yeah.
Coming and going.
Yeah.
But, you know, he spent at least $1 million of taxpayer dollars just going to Atlanta last night, Charlton, to go to the game for a half.
Wow. Wow.
And what was embarrassing about it, Charles, is that he's sitting there trying to sing the national anthem.
He didn't know the words.
And he didn't even know the words to the national anthem. So, I mean, if they ever going to quiz him about how patriotic he is, how he's challenging everybody else, challenging the NFL players, he couldn't even sing the words of the national anthem. They had to ban away from him a couple times because they realized that he was acting like Milli Vanilli out there just trying to legislate.
Yeah,
and not being able to keep pace. But you know, Charlton, also another ironic part of this.
Yeah.
Tui Tagovailoa, the backup quarterback for Alabama, who came in and succeeded Jalen Hurts in getting them to a national championship.
Yeah.
He has a tie to the former president, Charlton. He was born in the same hospital that former President Obama was.
Wow. And
also grew up in the same state that Obama was born in, Hawaii.
Yep.
So there was an iconic crossover there when you think about it. The Tua Tagovailoa from Hawaii, born in the same hospital that President Obama.
Yeah.
After Trump disappeared, all of a sudden Alabama can win.
That's so funny. I think that's so funny. And I know that sometimes presidents always want to show up, and because the athletes won't come, the black athletes won't come to Trump because they know what he's really about, Big C. So he goes to them just for half the grandstand for the national anthem. And even when he was holding his hand on his chest, he kept taking his hand off his chest like he really wasn't fully committed to what the national anthem stands for. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know, you got to know the songs. I think every true-blooded American knows the national anthem, Charlton.
Yeah.
But he spent so much time collaborating with Russia and other foreign countries that he knows the national anthem and he doesn't know the U.S. national anthem. I mean, he can get a great applause because, you know, Georgia and Alabama are red states, okay? We know that politically.
Yeah,
and it was a sea of red in the stadium last night.
Yeah.
So he felt at home.
Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't seen so many rednecks at a national championship, Charlton, other than a NASCAR race, okay?
That's something else, man. He went down there when he saw all that red down there. He thought he was going down for something political. He saw those black guys in uniforms. That's when he got in the Air Force One and left. See, I just want to bring up a thought that, number one, college football, there's something that we love about college football, and we saw it last night. We saw people, different colors, different ethnic groups. Down there in the South, people are very religious. Like, religion is only second to football down south, from what I understand, Big C. But to see how everybody comes together, small restaurants, large restaurants, and of course that gorgeous Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Just give me your thought on what that means to the United States and all the people that say that sports is dividing and people are turning their back on sports. Big C, no one turned their back on that game last night, whether they were there or watched it on TV or on their tablet. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this was a football game. We thought we saw all we could see in the semifinal game in Pasadena when Georgia played Oklahoma.
Yeah, at the Rose Bowl.
How intensifying that game was at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
That everybody was there to that last play, that last run of the game by Sonny Michel. But all of a sudden, we got taken to the next level last night in Georgia in that beautiful stadium that they have down there in Atlanta. You know, when you think about Alabama's team right now, Charlton, built for a 3-year run. You think about that.
Yeah.
They win a championship, and they built for a 3-year run. That game was dominated by true freshmen in the second half for Alabama on offense and defense, Charlton. That's what was so amazing, that these guys stepped up in prime time. And you think about it, a little over a year ago, Charlton, they were playing in high school championship games.
Yeah.
They were playing against other 17 and 18-year-old kids.
Yeah.
They stepped onto the national stage last night, Charlton, and were not awestruck to the least. They had running backs. They had receivers. They had a quarterback that can make plays. The biggest challenge right now at Alabama is Jalen Hurts, the sophomore quarterback. Remember, he took over in that first game, I think, when the UNC horse fell over down the field.
When they drug the horse. When they drug the white horse.
And he led Alabama to consecutive championship game appearances. Now he gets replaced in a game, Charlton, at halftime by a kid who's a true freshman, and they go on and win the national championship. I mean, Nick Saban really has a quandary on his hands, but he has the best of quandaries that you can have. You have two championship caliber quarterbacks. Can you keep both of them? Because with either one of those quarterbacks, Charlton, you can win. But Tua Tagovailoa, Charlton, we saw something last night Alabama hasn't seen since the days of Kenny Stabler, a left-handed quarterback that can push the ball down the field as well as run. He reminded me of an athletic Kenny Stabler. When Kenny Stabler was at Alabama, he had that type of legendary stance.
Yeah.
But last night, Tua Tagovailoa elevated himself beyond all Alabama quarterbacks with a half of football. I think Jason Peterman would have loved to have a half like that for the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, yeah. And you tell me, yeah, that kid outperformed half of the quarterbacks that played in the NFL this year when they talk about does a guy have what it takes. He's actually out of St. Louis High School, a private school in Honolulu, Hawaii, one of the private schools in Hawaii that turns out a ton of athletes. They're usually winning or losing a state championship for the state of Hawaii. They also had another freshman in running back, and Najee Harris out of Antioch High School in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. He was considered a high school All-American running back. He got away from Cal Berkeley, got away from Stanford, USC, UCLA. All the Pac-12, all the Big Ten conference was after Najee Harris, and he comes into a game last night and looks like he's ready for the NFL, but he's only a freshman. And these guys coming here, Najee's about 6'2", 230 pounds as a freshman. I don't know what they feed them good old boys over in the East Bay in California, but they have high school kids last year, and the kid who caught the touchdown pass was also playing high school football last year. That shows you how powerful it is with these elite camps that go on all over the country, where you can have the coaches can go to the camp and get players that they can't recruit because I think you only get 6 visits, Big C. That make any sense? And Nick Saban just told everybody what he's been doing, and also Jim Harbaugh tried to do it too by taking airplanes to these camps. Big C, is that the new trend for colleges to stop giving out scholarships and just go to these camps where they invite the top athletes from all over the country, Big C?
Well, look at it from Nick Saban's perspective, Charlton. Who doesn't want to go to Alabama? You think about it. You talked about this kid, Najee Harris.
Yeah.
An All-American running back in the state of California. You look at the Pac-12 conference as a whole.
Yeah.
And this is what we talked about the other day is the Pac-12 conference not really getting invites to the national championship run. They've had one invite since this thing has started.
Yeah,
okay,
that was
with Washington last year.
In Oregon, yeah.
In the first year in Washington.
Yeah.
They've had 2 invites.
Yeah.
So when you think about players saying my better opportunity is going down south, Nick Saban doesn't have to recruit anybody.
Nope.
I think that's become the true understanding of Alabama football since he's been around. You keep looking at all they do is keep reloading.
Yep.
You say, okay, who is this guy? They had a true freshman left offensive tackle when their starting offensive tackle went down, who was considered their best offensive lineman.
Yeah.
He went down in the game. They brought in a freshman. You didn't know that best offensive lineman was gone.
Big C, you want to know where that best offensive lineman for Jonah Williams? He's out of Folsom, California, another California product. You think about that. And he was an All-American in high school at Folsom High School in California. They went 16-0. Also played on the same team with Jake Browning that went up to Washington. So what we're seeing right now, we're seeing high school All-Americans that are leaving the state of California to go 2,000 miles down to the south, Big C, of all places. They're leaving the Golden State. They're going down south, and they're playing these guys as freshmen. Well, sometimes they have to redshirt in the Pac-12, Big C. That make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you also look at this. You know, we talked about attendance in the Pac-12 stadiums.
Yeah.
Who sells out a Pac-12 stadium? Nobody, Charlton.
Yeah.
Nobody. I mean, you're right there with Stanford, you know, and you think about the only time they sell out is really the big game.
Yeah.
Between Cal and Stanford. And maybe when Notre Dame comes to town, but no other time, and they only have a 50,000-seat stadium.
Yep.
You go down to Tuscaloosa and play, Charlton, every home game, there's 103,000 people inside the stadium.
Yeah.
You might have 25 to 30,000 people outside the stadium.
Yeah.
And this is what the young players look for, Charlton. They look for something that's electrifying and gravitating.
Yeah.
And when you're in that type of atmosphere, you know, it's like when we looked at these bowl games throughout the bowl season. And you have these networks who are afraid to pan up beyond the bench level.
Yeah.
They set the cameras up so high on the stadium so that when there's a punt, they're still panning down. They don't pan up. You don't see the punt in the air.
Yeah.
Last night at the game, you saw every punt. You followed it through its arc.
Yeah.
In these bowl games getting there 3 weeks ago, Charlton, you didn't see that. Because when you look in these stadiums and there's 20,000, 13,000 fans in these stadiums, Charlton, an embarrassing moment, realistically, for the NCAA. Other than raking television revenue, because the big boys are getting paid and the players are not.
Oh, yeah.
So they put these players out there in physical peril so that the universities and the NCAA can make money. Not because we're caring about the athlete or saying This is an experience that they get because they get to participate in the bowl game because they were 6-6 on the season.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
6-6. I could never be proud of a 6-6 season as a player.
Yeah.
To me, that's losing.
Yeah.
You can't win the conference, but you go into a bowl game. You can't even rank in the top 3 in your conference.
No.
And you're in a bowl game.
So let me
that's not good for college athletics, Charles.
Let me ask you a question about Georgia. Georgia hasn't won a championship since it's been about 30 years almost when they had Herschel Walker running the football for them. And that team last night is every bit as good as any college football team I've seen in the last several years, especially Big C when they run the football with that stable of running backs they have down south. And when I look at the fact that they had a freshman quarterback as well, does that mean that the talent level of college quarterbacks is not developed, where a freshman, a guy playing high school football last year, can come in and start on the number 1 or number 2 team in the country? Does that mean they're not developing quarterbacks, Big C, the way they're developing these running backs? No matter how good Tua was last night, is he NFL ready? He probably had to get some grooming behind him. But I'll tell you this, he looked better than Sam Darnold, who's been quoted as America's darling quarterback out of USC, and I love the Pac-12 conference. But you tell me that guy that can get in the game and run and pass, he looked like Colin Kaepernick back in the day when they gave him a chance to play football too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about Jacob Fromm, Charleston, of Georgia. He took over for another true sophomore. Also, they got hurt game 4 of the season, and he did not relinquish his starting position.
Yeah.
And also, Fromm and Tui Talanogo, they were roommates in an elite quarterback camp last year.
Yeah.
So they knew each other very well. They had developed a relationship, and they both come from California and Hawaii.
Yeah.
You think about this. These are 2 California and Hawaii products, as you say, going all the way down south to play football. They bypass the entire West Coast.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about the West Coast, Charlton, and the lack of talent that is being able to keep out there now.
Yeah.
That these players are moving to where they technically have primetime football when you look at the East and the South. These are the big-time games because the West Coast games are not getting that coverage from national broadcast, even because they come on so late.
Yeah.
You don't get any voting, you don't get any polling. And these players know that they have certain talents that you normally don't find in the South.
You know that.
And when they come down, especially as a thrower, Charlton, they feel that they're head and shoulders above everyone else.
You know, the Pac-12's fault, and I say the commissioners of Northern California, the Pac-12 commissioner, their problem, Big C, is college football. There's something about playing a lot of games late on the West Coast when people on the East Coast are asleep. They have to say, wait a minute. People get up early to get their day done watching the football or whatever, tailgating. Like most NFL games, they're all played about 1:30 is the latest kickoff on the West Coast, unless you have a late game. That's maybe a 5:30 kickoff on the West Coast. If they start playing these games like they do for most games, there was a time when the Rose Bowl was already like a 1 o'clock kickoff. Not having these college games, Stanford and Cal and Washington, and even Southern Cal will play games starting at 7 o'clock p.m. That's when the East Coast is asleep. So what does that mean? That means a lot of these players, that's why they didn't know who McCaffrey was last year, even though he led the Pac-12 in rushing, even beat Reggie Bush's records. But if kickoff starts at 7:30 or 7 o'clock and you don't see it on the East Coast until 10 or 10:30, you're missing a lot of that national recognition. The Pac-12 better start moving their games up to around 4 o'clock at the latest if they want to start competing to keep some of that homegrown talent. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, not just 7:30. You look at 8:30 kickoffs. A lot of games on the West Coast. They're talking about the heat index. You know, college football players are accustomed to that, just like NFL players, Charlton, are accustomed to the heat. And the West Coast games, Charlton, realistically should be starting 1 o'clock West Coast time, no later than 2 o'clock. You can't be kicking off that game at 7:30, 8:30 at night and expect people on the East Coast with that 3-hour time difference to be up watching that game. And for these players, they say, look, I'm not getting any exposure from the media, from the scouts. I want to have an opportunity to put my foot in the turf and be recognized. And that's what they're not getting by staying on the West Coast. When we look at great quarterbacks on the West Coast, everybody talks about Browning, and everybody talks about the kid at Rosen and Donald. Falcon's the best quarterback in the Pac-12, Charlton, even though he won't be drafted as high as others. But you look at him up at Washington State, they never got any notoriety up until this year. He led the conference in all offensive statistics as a quarterback. But the other quarterbacks are rated higher than him.
Big
and they
C.
say, well, he's a system quarterback. I think every quarterback in college plays in a certain system, Charlton.
Yeah.
So you got to say everybody's a system quarterback because they're playing under the offensive system that's set up in their school.
Big C.
No one knows who Falk is when he sets the Pac-12 passing records because his games are always at 7:30 and 8 o'clock at night.
Let me ask you this question, Big C. You're down south where you see all these athletes, and you guys do take sports a little bit more serious, especially when it comes to football. But I want to get your thoughts. And again, I love the Pac-12 because I grew up out here, Big C. But when I look at a kid, even like a Jake Browning up at Folsom, good quarterback, and went to Washington. And when I look at the kid that came out of Rosen, out of UCLA, played at St. John Bosco in Southern California. And then even the kid down at USC that they've been touting as the can't miss. Sam Darnold needs to come out and play pro football. Now, that was Maché and that guy that you talk to all the time. Maché and the other guy. I can't remember the other guy's name.
Oh, the guy that you went to hamburger place. I thought you guys were partners one day together.
No, we did not eat the Ouya burger together. But let me ask you this question, because sometimes you believe what you hear, and then other times you just got to believe what your eyes see. So for any sports fan, irrespective of what some prognosticator is going to tell you, look at how Sam Darnold played against Ohio State. Okay, the quarterback at USC, and I want him to do well. But if you're an NFL GM, look at how Darnold played with a 1.5 year experience against Ohio State. Same kind of defense that Alabama and Georgia has. And look at how Tua, a freshman playing at St. Louis High School in Honolulu, Hawaii last year, played. And they ask me, if you're an NFL GM, okay, the guys who are hired to make the right decisions, which one looks like he's more ready to come in and lead an NFL team, even though we know the freshman just started last night? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the game that Tua had in the second half last night, Charlton, was just electrifying. And you're talking about a quarterback that played against a tremendous defense who shut down Oklahoma in the second half the previous week.
Yep.
And people tried to use the excuse, well, they had to travel across country. Well, traveling across country now, Charlton, takes 4.5 to 5 hours, period.
And
you're not on a horse and buggy, you're not on a train. You're there at train day, and no one knows the time difference. You're back at school, and so you can't say, well, they had to travel across country, because every NFL team does it every week. They travel across country, okay? A lot of college teams travel across country every week, so don't give me that excuse if they were in California 8 days ago playing, and then they were at home. Yeah. It wasn't like they had to stay in hotels. They were at home. They had home cooking, so they had all the advantage. All of a sudden, they had a kid that showed up that had a little more talent than what they expected.
Isn't that something?
That was the biggest difference in the game, Charlton. Don't tell me that they had to travel across country.
Yeah.
Because both teams had to travel. Alabama had to travel from New Orleans back to Alabama, and then they had to drive from Alabama to Atlanta. So they had a road game, okay? They weren't at home.
I want to ask. Go ahead, Big C. I want to ask you this question: how the great Saint Nick, the best college football coach in the universe, indisputable. When you look at what Paul Bear Bryant did, I remember they also had some West Coast influence. They played USC, where they had Sam Bam Cunningham that ran all over the Crimson Tide, and John McKay was the coach. And it was the great Paul Bear Bryant that said, I got to get me some of those. And he wasn't talking about white horses, Big C, when he said he got to get some of those, okay? He was talking about black players, okay? Down south, the good old boy network. Nick Saban, winning national championships. Have you noticed the color of his quarterbacks lately, Big C? Because it doesn't matter, at least we say it doesn't matter, but the coaches are recruiting black quarterbacks. Even though Tua is not considered black, if you look at skin color, he is. He is more African genetics than he has European genetics, okay? And I say that because of this. He's not going to be promoted as the next NFL savior because he's not white. That's just a fact. Just look at the numbers. Look at the kid at Ohio State. Set a record for yardage at Ohio State this year. And blew out USC in their bowl game, the Cotton Bowl down in Texas. No one's talking about him being, given the NFL pedigree, the coaching, and the tutelage. But they want to get Darnold, who's thrown 19 interceptions or turnovers this year. They want to get Rosen, who didn't have UCLA at the top of the heap. And they want to get Browning, who, Washington's not a bad team. But you look at these young players, why are they not getting the hype on the same push to the NFL when their records are even better, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you also, Charlton, look at Jackson out of Louisville, last year's Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
He's not really getting any consideration in the NFL. He's going to go enter the draft, but everyone's saying, well, he's going to be a low-round draft pick because what they understand is that they can get him for little dollars.
Yeah.
If you don't draft him in the first round, you draft him in the third or fourth round, and he becomes this NFL starter, you're not paying him $25, $30 million to learn a system, Charlton.
No.
You're getting him for a 4-year contract for less than $10 million is what you're getting him for.
Yeah.
He becomes a starter just like Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott didn't make $1 million his rookie year as a starting quarterback with the best record in the NFL.
Wow.
But you look at the other quarterbacks that were drafted in front of him, Wentz, as well as
Goff. Yep.
Goff.
Yeah.
Both of those guys in their rookie year with their signing bonus and all did some $16 million each.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
$16 million versus a guy who didn't get $1 million.
Yeah.
And if you look at his 2-year record, Charlton, in the NFL, it's better than both of those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You know, as a starter in the NFL, he has 22 victories in his first 2 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
And he has not made $2 million as a quarterback.
Yeah.
So think about that. If I draft this African-American kid later on in the draft and he doesn't pan out, oh well. But if I draft him in the first round and he pays out, think about what his second contract is going to be.
Yeah.
But I dropped this kid, this white kid in the first round. I said, well, it's developmental. You know, they got to get some better players around him. It's always they got to get some better players around him.
Yeah.
That's always going to be the story.
Yeah.
But when we look at the African-American quarterbacks, Teddy Bridgewater went at the end of the first round when he was drafted by the Vikings.
Yeah.
Took the team to the playoffs. Unfortunately, blew out his knee 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But he took the team to the playoffs in his second year. Once he became a starter. Now, he's just like Lamar Jackson and not as good of an athlete as Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
So you're looking at the same pedigree that you had with a Teddy Bridgewater.
Yep.
But what they want to do is compare Lamar Jackson to Griffin III that was in Washington. So, well, you know, you can't run against NFL linebackers like that. Well, if you don't put him in that peril, then he won't do it.
Yeah.
It's just like with Cam Newton. Everybody said, well, he's not a top-flight NFL quarterback. Damn, he was the MVP. He's been in the playoffs the last 3 years.
Yeah.
He's been in the Super Bowl, but he's not a top-flight NFL quarterback. I keep hearing this about Cam Newton.
Yeah.
They got more than a dozen losing white quarterbacks in the NFL, and nobody is saying that they're not a top-flight NFL quarterback. I don't understand that.
That makes a lot of sense. And the fact we saw it last night, I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. For every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, even your mom and pop soccer leagues, when you reach out to them, let them know that Big C sent you. You can call 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. So congratulations again, Alabama, and the great Nick Saban. Big C, we've had these runs before, and you mentioned before he has 6 national championships. I think the next closest guy to him is Urban Meyer with 3. But I look at what Pete Carroll did at USC back in the day when he was winning Pac-12 championships and a couple of national championships over Michigan and Oklahoma, and then they lost that great game to Texas down in the Rose Bowl. And we know you could even look at Woody Hayes. Woody Hayes didn't have this kind of run that Nick Saban has. You didn't have it with Bo Schembechler. You didn't have it with anybody. You didn't have it with Pete Carroll. You didn't have it with anyone. So what's it? Tom Osborne didn't do it. Barry Switzer didn't do it back in the day. Lou Holtz didn't do it. And that good old boy up there at Penn State, he didn't do it. What's it going to take? And what has Nick Saban done to the rest of the coaching brethren where they give a guy like Jimbo Fisher $75 million? You think Texas A&M wants that money back now, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the closest thing we've seen to what Nick Saban is doing was the University of Miami back in the 80s. And they had 3 coaches that went through that.
Yep.
You had Erickson, Snellenberger, and Coker, who won national championships. And they had a dynasty.
Yep.
They had what Alabama has now. But the NCAA sought to break that up because that was a minority program, and the NCAA didn't like that because they were embarrassing these heritage universities.
Yeah.
That was the best program that we had seen up until right now with Miami. As far as established dominance.
Yeah.
The University of Miami had what Alabama has now.
Yep.
But the NCAA stepped in and broke that up. They put them on sanctions. They did everything they could to disband it. They put up rules that that players could no longer adhere, that they could no longer do without getting penalized. All because of the University of Miami and the NCAA didn't like it, especially after what they had done to the University of Notre Dame. You know, that really hurt the NCAA when they did that. But what Nick Saban has done, he's basically copied the model of what the University of Miami had done in the 80s as far as the recruitment of players. You look at the speed that he has at the wide receiver position. It's unparalleled. I mean, from freshman to senior, he has it up across the board. Last year, he had a dominant tight end in O.J. Howard, who is with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. You know, you look at the plethora of running backs he had. I mean, you think about it, he's had 2 Heisman Trophy winners, Charleston, during these runs, Mark Ingram and Henry, that are in the NFL, that are in the playoffs with Tennessee and New Orleans. So he has developed players, and when you look at some of the top defensive backs in the NFL, Charleston, this mirrors what was going on at the University of Miami when you look at the talent at the certain positions. Nick Saban has copied that mold that they developed down there at University of Miami under Howard Schnellenberger, leading to Jimmy Johnson, leading to Dennis Erickson, leading to Larry Coker, all of these guys. Nick Saban said, let me look and see what they did to be successful. Let me go out there and get this top-flight African-American talent at all positions. And that's what he's done. People don't talk about the University of Miami, Charleston. But they laid the mold for all the teams in the South how to be successful. You have to have a certain type of player with a certain type of swagger. And I saw that last night on the field, Charleston. I saw players with swagger out on the field. Even though the NCAA doesn't want to say that, but you saw players having swag on the field, having attitude. This is what they were doing. And you can't be passive in this violent game. And these players weren't. They would go out on a limb. They would take a penalty. We saw that several times last night. Hey, this is what it's all about. We can rest up over the next 5 months, but right now tonight, you're going to remember my name.
They had a kid at Alabama wanted to beat up his own coach's Big C on the sideline, a linebacker. I think he was number 48. But, you know, it's an emotional game. But I do want to bring this up because we're the only program that will do it all the time. Look at how much money went into white bank accounts last night. From Nick Saban to the athletic director at Alabama to Kirby Smart and the athletic director at Georgia. Those guys are Caucasian. When they went to the bank today, Big C, they put in a lot of money for bonuses, and also they're making multiple millions of dollars a year. And people say, well, why we got to bring it up all the time? It's because they give the black guys nothing. Okay? They get nothing.
No, they do. No, that's wrong. They give them a sweatsuit. They give them a baseball cap. They give them a T-shirt. They get that. So they did get some compensation. And I think they gave them a post-game meal.
Okay.
So they got to eat after the game.
They let them eat. But at some time, because this is a good old boy network, okay? It is not changing until someone takes them to court. It is so egregious. Just imagine if all the black guys got paid and the white guys got no money. Imagine if Nick Saban got no money, but he got a scholarship, whatever they pay for a kid. Imagine if Smart got no money, but they gave him scholarship money that they give the kids and a meal stipend. And imagine if they took that $11 million contract that Nick Saban has and gave it to all their athletes and divided up. Most of them are black, okay? Most of them come from middle class or less than middle class backgrounds. Imagine if they took that money that was made in the Bowl Championship Series, where TV is paying out over $470 million, ESPN alone, to televise black athletes all over the networks. How much money do they get? They get nothing. It all goes in the white bank accounts, Big C. We know it's an antitrust violation. So while a lot of good old boys are happy and eating barbecue ribs and drinking moonshine, they got to know they just got robbed. They got robbed. They put in all this labor, all this talent, all this time. At the end of the day, Big C, they got nothing. How can we change that? I know Big C Sports is the only one that still talks about it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the cheapest Charleston purchase ticket for the game last night was $1,500.
How much?
That's the normal price. That's not scalp. $1,500 was the cheapest purchase ticket for the game last night, okay?
How much of that went to black players?
Scalping prices.
How much of that went to black athletes?
Well, if one of them got up to the nosebleed section, Charleston, he could have got some, but he couldn't climb it high in the city.
Wow. Wow.
So,
yeah.
We know that of the 78,000 people at Charleston, none of that money was trickled down to the athletes.
No trickle-down economics. Yeah.
It trickled down. They got the sweat, they got the labor for this last night, Charleston, but none of this finance would go to assist them in any kind of way.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we talked about in our programs before, how do you compensate athletes? Well, you take 10% of what the coach's salary are.
Yep.
Okay, that's what you do. You take 10% of what the coach's salary are on the university.
Yep.
You take 10% of the revenue that they've generated for that particular sport from the university. And you take that and you dole it out to the athletes.
Yep.
That's how you do it.
Yep.
If you want an equitable way to pay players, it's very simple formula, Charlton. Regardless of the university, regardless of the size, it would all come out even based on what you pay the coaches and what you bring in at the gate.
That's
because
a good point.
The players are the one that makes that gate packed, okay?
Yeah.
They don't show up at the game to see Nick Saban. Yes, he's a showman on the sideline.
Yeah.
They didn't show up at the game to see Kirby Smart.
No.
They showed up to see those tremendous athletes perform as gladiators last night on the field.
Yeah.
That was a spectacle. Every now and then a broadcaster will mention the coach, but last night they mentioned the assistant coaches more than they mentioned the head coach.
Yeah.
Because the assistant coaches are the ones that are out there facilitating to the players,
Yep.
getting them ready for the game. The head coach is just the CEO. He's sitting there and he gets animated. That's all he's doing. He's getting animated. He's not making the play call.
No.
You don't see him with anything other than a headset on, pointing and yelling at somebody.
Yep.
You see the assistant coaches with the flip charts coming over with the game plan, talking to the players. Those are the ones who are doing the work.
Yeah, that's
the
a
head
good point.
coach is getting all the accolades. Win or lose, he's getting the accolades.
Yep.
But the assistant coaches are the ones that are putting in the work along with the players that are making these programs great because they talked about it. 3 of Kirby Smart's assistants came from Alabama with him.
Wow.
So that's 4 Alabama assistants that were on Georgia's sideline last night.
Yep.
They were on Alabama sidelines 2 years ago. Okay?
Yep.
And now they're on Georgia's sideline. So these guys are gravitating and making players good. So you think about it, Kirby Smart is the head coach, but those 4 assistants helped develop that program, Charlton.
Yeah, and they've been doing it for years. And I think back to everything we talk about. They only talk about how can we steer my money into the good old boys, and most of them are white. They want to expand the bowl games. Why? Because there's more money, not for the athletes, but for the white guys, okay? They always say, well, how can we get more TV revenue and more, and ESPN writing a check for $470 million. How do we get some of that to the black athletes or even some of the white guys that play? But we know it's 80-20 black. There's never that conversation. It's always how can we take more money out of these kids' pockets? There was a kid, and I love the sport. That's why we got to talk about it. There was a kid that collapsed last night on the sideline for Alabama. They didn't stop the game because, well, he was on the sideline, so we're going to just go on with the game and hopefully he'll be okay. There was no concern about that kid if he collapsed to the point where he couldn't function. They did acknowledge it some, but they could have stopped the game even for a minute or two. But it was like, hey, push him to the side. We got to keep going because we got these TV commercials to sell because these white guys want their money in their bank accounts. So for all the fans that go and cheer and you love the games and you love these teams, just imagine for one moment that all that money went into the households of these black players or into some form of an annuity so they would have money forever, or their parents who send their kids off to college to become free labor for these coaches and for the schools, and they're all Caucasian. If I was dumb, Big C, I'd be jumping around cheering too. I'd be, hey, I'm so happy. Look at this football. Yeah, we love football. Rah, rah, rah. But because I read a little bit, I just know there was a huge wealth transfer last night. And just like in the days of slavery, and people might say, well, that's a stretch. They didn't pay the slaves either, Big C. They worked them just as hard as those kids were working. The only thing different than slavery and last night is they make the kids think that you're going to go to the NFL and get a contract. That not that many people in the NFL losing jobs waiting for a college kid. Big C, that make any sense at all, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it was very callous last night when you talk about the young defensive back from Alabama that collapsed on the sideline. I think the broadcast team spent about 5 seconds addressing that issue, Charlton, and they moved on. They said, well, he's not on the field, so they're going to go on with the game.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very callous of the head coach not to mention this young man, Charlton, after the game was over. That should have been said, that this young man's name and that he was in the forefront of their thought.
Yeah.
The national championship is great, but whatever happened to him health-wise is more meaningful, that we need to pay more attention to that. We can celebrate this later at any time, but our concerns are about his health and welfare. That was never mentioned by Nick Saban, and so that really disappointed me in Nick Saban. He'll go out and get all the great black athletes.
Yeah.
One of them fall by the wayside with a health issue.
Yeah.
I got another one look just like him. I don't have a problem. I put him in the game. That was Nick Saban's mentality last night.
Yeah. Now think about it. Had Nick Saban passed out on the sideline, you think it would have been all over the news? You think
the game would have continued? No, the game would have stopped, Charlton.
It would have stopped.
If it had been Nick Saban who had fallen on the sideline, the game would have paused.
Yeah.
They would have held the game up to 10 to Nick Saban.
Yep.
Think about that. There's a different level of respect for him versus the athletes. The athletes are throwaways.
Yeah.
And we saw that last night. Let's get the medical staff over there and tend to him. But if it had been Nick Saban who had passed out on the sideline, they would have stopped the game.
Yeah, they definitely would have.
They would have made sure that they paid focus to him on television as well as with the medical staff.
Yeah.
This athlete falls out, this young African-American athlete, Jonathan, hey, put him on a cart, get rid of him, and bring another one in.
And I feel bad for his parents that had to see that, whether they were at the game or watching on TV. You know, I want to say, I'm sorry you had to go through that, and not even an acknowledgement other than a 5-second acknowledgement. Hey, well, we got to get back to the game because we got to make this money for TV. So anyway, congratulations on all the schools. And if you think about it, if you are a fan, if you are a player, if you follow what we're saying on Big C Sports, you have a chance to at least be part of something great when we start getting money into the coffers of these athletes, at least an annuity or something that will help them get money to a Big C. I'm just tired of seeing the athletes being taken advantage of because nobody talks about it. Before we close, Big C, I just want to touch on one thing here. And today, over in Alameda, the John Gruden was introduced as the head coach of the Oakland Raiders again. And when you think about Gruden with the Raiders, his first stint, he was 38-26 for the Oakland Raiders before he was in some type of trade or sent off to Tampa. And then at Tampa, he was only 57-55. In 7 years, he coached the Raiders for 4 years. Now, he was 2-3 in the playoffs. So would someone please tell me on your job interview, and if you get the money, congratulations. But just think about something. If you're 57 wins and 55 losses, how does that become worth $100 million, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton's got a little over 500 winning percentage, okay?
Okay.
So I guess that's a heck of a resume.
Yeah.
And you talked a strong game. You got to think about that, Charlton, when you said that he was 57-52.
57-55.
Okay, 57-55. When he went to the Super Bowl, he was 14-2.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
14-2 when he went to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So he had a whole lot of losses after going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
In his first year with Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
He had a whole lot of losses to catch up.
Yep.
So I'm looking at his downward trend as a head coach, which caused him to be fired. John Gruden didn't walk away from the game.
Yeah, he was fired.
And he was fired.
Yeah.
You know, they said, you got to go because you're not winning, so we don't want you around here.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing you got to look at with John Gruden in his situation. And when you think about coaches, Charlton, coming back,
Yeah.
After being out of game, thinking that they're going to, all of a sudden turn things around from where they had been losing before.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few coaches that went through that. Think about Mike Ditka, winning championships with the Bears.
Yeah.
Got out of the game, went to New Orleans.
Yeah.
Couldn't win a game.
No.
Herm Edwards did the same thing
Yeah.
when he was with the New York Jets and went to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
He had a sub-500 rate. We're talking both of these coaches, Charlton, with a 30% winning record. Herm Edwards and Mike Ditka. Everybody thinks of them as geniuses.
Yep.
But look at Joe Gibbs,
Yep.
who left the Washington Redskins, who came back to the Washington Redskins and could not find that success that got him 3 Super Bowls when he was there on his first run.
Yeah.
Dennis Green, who had a great run with the Minnesota Vikings, was only a 500 coach, less than 500 coach when he went to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
He only won 30% of his games at Charlton.
Yeah.
Bill Parcells did the same thing. Went to the Dallas Cowboys after being with the Giants going to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
With the Patriots going to the Super Bowl. Got to the Giants. The Cowboys, he was just a 500 coach. Marty Schottenheimer.
Yeah.
Another one of those coaches who led the Cleveland Browns consistently to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Got to the Redskins, got to the Chargers, couldn't get it done. George Seifert. Think about it. George Seifert won a Super Bowl with the 49ers. Went to the Carolina Panthers, Charlton.
Yeah.
He was a 30% winning quarterback.
That's a good point.
Neal did the same thing, Charlton. He was the only coach to find some success after leaving the broadcast booth and coming back. But you think about it, he won a Super Bowl with the Rams, Charlton.
Yeah.
But when he got fired from the Rams, he was 1 win less than 500.
Yeah.
Think about it. He won a Super Bowl. He was 1 win less than 500 when he got fired.
That's something else. And so I just want, for the people who really wonder what's going on, what makes somebody worth $100 million over 10 years, is because someone's dumb enough to give them that money. Okay, that's the only reason. There's a lot of coaches on the college level and even some assistants on the NFL level they're not retreads, but we know the NFL is a good old boy network. It's who you know, not how well you coach or all that. But if a 57-55 record is worth $100 million, by all means, take the money. But Davis he's not what his dad was. He's hiring a guy that his dad got rid of. They could have kept Gruden if they wanted him, but Al didn't want him there for whatever reason. Tampa Bay found out after a 57-55 career. That's a fact. I mean, when I watch some of the people over at Alameda today, and they had some of the Hall of Famers sitting around and they're congratulating Gruden and saying, hey, this is the guy that was already fired from here, and now Mark is going to bring him back. And they're celebrating like, hey, we're going to go to the Super Bowl now. He never took the Raiders to the Super Bowl. I hope a lot of people can Google that also. But 57-55 is worth $100 million. I want to bring this point up, Big C. Congratulations to everybody who gets whatever they get. If someone's going to give you that money, by all means, take it. But he said something to the fans that I thought was very callous. Imagine a man that says, hey, honey, I found this new woman in my dreams. I'm going to leave you for her in 2 years, but I want you to give me your heart and soul for the next 2 years. I want to make the next 2 years before I leave you the best 2 years of your life. Can you believe that's what he said to the Raider fan base? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if he can make it the best 2 years of their lifetime. You got to think about a once proud organization that was winning Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Tom Flores gave him the best 2 years of their life when he went to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay? He gave him the best 2 of the Raider history in that franchise.
Yeah.
So he's not going to equal what Tom Flores did as a head coach there in Oakland. Nor even get to where John Madden had gotten to.
No.
This is a guy who's already been banished from the organization and brought back in.
Yeah.
People thinking, okay, if I rekindle this old relationship, maybe it'll be better the second time around. It's not.
Yeah.
Because the players have changed in the 10 years that John Gruden has been out of the game.
Yeah.
Just because you sit up and run a film breakdown with some college quarterbacks
and cuss and scream at people,
what they recognize does not make you an expert.
Yeah.
These are college kids that are not walking into the NFL setting the league on fire.
No.
He's walking into a winning organization. Now, you got to think about John Gruden, Charlton. He has never inherited a losing professional team. When he took over from the Raiders, from Art Shell, they were a 500 organization, okay?
Yep.
A 500 organization. When he took over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from Tony Dungy, they were a playoff team. They were an NFC championship caliber team.
Yeah.
So they had gotten there with Sean King the year before.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
So he is not taking over with an organization now, Charlton, with a winning record.
Yeah.
So people are going to find out in a year, not 2 years. This is a team that a year ago was in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That hadn't been there in over a decade.
Yeah.
Now, he's supposed to walk in and be this genius. They should be back in the playoffs. Matter of fact, they should win the AFC West next year.
Yep.
For $100 million.
They should win the Super Bowl.
AFC West next year, hands down. Halfway through the season, they should be undefeated.
They should win the Super Bowl $100 million, Big Z.
Not a problem. He should have walked up and said, I guarantee you a Super Bowl. I will make this the best 2 years of your life. I'm taking you to back-to-back Super Bowls because that's how good I am, because they're paying me $100 million.
But you know the egregious part of that too. If you're just dumb and you're drinking on beer, they drink a lot of beer and wine in California, Big C. They're not into the moonshine like you good old boys down south. But when you know that the Raiders owe the county of Alameda, which they were talking back and forth about building them a stadium, okay? And they were talking about how we're going to build a stadium to keep the Raiders at least in Northern California, somewhere in the Bay Area, even though they've had, that dirt that they play on right now has won a lot of championships for football, basketball, and baseball. They still owe Alameda County like $40 million, okay? And then the owner comes on TV, well, they can't pay the $40 million because they don't have the money. But they give a guy that had a 55 and actually a 57 and 55 record $100 million. Somehow the math doesn't add up, and the people are celebrating as if they're doing a good thing when Oakland is going to be, fleeced again by these good old boys. Al Davis, his son, Mark Davis, they're going to screw the people again. And instead of giving money back to Alameda County, they're going to Las Vegas because they said they didn't have the $40 million to pay back. So they were trying to raise more private money. But now this guy shows up that got fired or traded, however you want to call it, and they give him $100 million. I think it's just a slap in the face of Alameda, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what people think about it, the fans, the local people that have supported this organization for the decades that it has been an organization.
Yeah.
You know, they're in Oakland. You've gotten taxpayer dollars, and people say politics and sports don't mix. You're taking taxpayer dollars, which I think is part political.
Yeah, it is. Last I checked.
You paid this team to come back in. You gave them tax breaks. And now they're saying they don't have the $40 million to pay back, but we're going to give this guy $100 million. And so I don't know if people know math.
No, I guess I don't. It's called fake math, Big C.
You don't have $40 million to pay, but you got $100 million to pay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's accurate, because you didn't have $40 million. Think about it. That's why they went up to $100 million, because they didn't have $40 million.
Yeah, that's funny.
So that never comes into the equation. No, we didn't say nothing about 40. It's 100. It's a difference. We don't have the 40. We have 100. We don't have change.
Yeah.
So we can't pay you. We don't have change for $100 million.
Yeah.
So we can't pay you.
Yeah, that's funny, Big C. So obviously, I remember talking to John Vella, former Oakland Raider, back when the Raiders were coming from
offensive tackle. Charlton played at USC.
At USC.
Super Bowl team. Yep. Number 75.
Yep. Good player, good person. I remember talking to him, doing a commercial for him at Raider Locker Room down in Castro Valley about 20 years ago when the Raiders were coming back. And I was asking John, I said, John, what does it mean to you that the Raiders are coming back to Oakland? And he said it means everything. They are Oakland. And it's about the people who supported them. You know, the Raiders, that organization, they've given people jobs. And they've given people jobs to go back and bring food home to their children, right? And to go pay the mortgage, and to go buy cars, and to go entertain their families, and to send their kids off to college. That's what those jobs did. And the fact that the Raiders are rubbing in their face, we don't have $40 million to give back to taxpayers, but we could give $100 million to a guy that my dad got rid of, and that had a 57-55 record down in Tampa before they fired him also. But they're going to leave all these people who, and John Gruden says, we're going to give you the best 2 years of your life. What the world is that about? Give them the $40 million back, Big C, not the best 2 years. That make any sense, Big C?
Well, you know, some rich people always say we're going to give you great dreams and stuff. You know?
Yeah.
They didn't say nothing about letting you eat, but we can give you great dreams. You can fantasize about the meal you could have had.
You got dreams, we want them too, right? You got dreams, we want the dreams too. That's what Richard Pryor told us back in the day. But anyway, I know all's fair in love and war. I just feel bad for the city of Oakland. If you're going to leave for another woman, at least just do it. But don't tell the woman you're with to support you for 2 more years until the new woman is ready, getting out of the hair parlor, whatever it is. Big C, I want to bring up one more thing. I know we're going to touch more on what's happening in the world of playoffs, and we're looking forward to the divisional playoffs this weekend. Should be some great action. If they're as good as the Rose Bowl and the national championship game we're really ready for some really good football coming up. But I want to just get your thoughts on one more thing in this coaching carousel. Whether it's NFL or college, we talked about Nick Saban. At least if John Gruden going 57-55 at Tampa is worth $100 million, should Nick Saban start asking the Raiders, what am I worth for winning 6 championships in 10 years? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, I don't think that an NFL team will talk to Nick Saban anymore. I mean, he's priced himself outside of the NFL cost factor, because when they gave John Gruden his contract, they can no longer push the kid. I don't even know if they can afford Jim Harbaugh.
No.
So he has a better winning percentage than Nick Saban has as an NFL coach. And even not Nick Saban, but John Gruden.
Yeah.
He has a better winning percentage. So when you talk about tossing around the dollars, you can't afford a college coach anymore. You know, you got to go get a retrade and say, okay, we can hire you.
That's funny. I know. Big C, there's a reason I love this business. We can speak from the heart. We can speak about what's real. And we just ask people to Google John Gruden's record, as everybody's all what they call ogling over John Gruden's record. Just Google the record and ask me how that's worth $100 million. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bundini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-handed man. He would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I guess I'm going to be a little depressed now that college football is over. After these 2 past electrifying weeks that we've had of playoffs, you know, the Rose Bowl and the national championship game. Now we got to lean on some NFL playoffs that are going to be outside in some inclement weather. We got Tom Brady facing Tennessee, that he's only lost to 1 time out of 7 contests, Charlton. Wow. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers versus Jacksonville, that, you know, since that loss early in the season, they went on a 10 out of run. So Pittsburgh and Jacksonville will meet up for the second time this year, Charlton. That's the game that I'm looking the most to. That will Pittsburgh and Big Ben redeem themselves from that early season loss?
Well, that's a good game that we're going to be watching, and we'll pay a lot of attention on that, Big C. We want to tell you, everyone in the sports universe, you can follow us every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. When you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, we're on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And the good old boys down south, we always want to tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no woman should ever have to go through that garbage all on her own. And as we tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.